Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, Josh? It's just another game down, still top of the league, and we're staring down the last 4 games of the season with a cup final at the end of it. I think for a lot of Celtic fans, it is like job done coming out of Dundee Dens Park, but for me, it was a big case of Dundee déjà vu. You know, we needed a brace from a winger to come out and save the day for us. And we're here to talk about that, as well as, you know, a lot of other things rumbling around Celtic Park and Lennoxtown at the moment. B teams, transfer links, player of the year awards, and obviously we've got Hearts next week, which we are actually giving away tickets for. We're giving away a total of 4 tickets to Celtic versus Hearts this weekend. If you want to get involved in that, we'll just mention this at the top of the show. You need to be a subscriber, and it's going to be 4 random comments, 2 of them from the breakdown of the Dundee game, and 2 of them from the preview of the Dundee game. If you want to know how to get involved, just watch those videos. I'll explain it all to you. And yeah, we'll be at Parkhead this weekend to see the Jam Tarts come to town and try and wreck the party, but it's just going to be, hopefully, another grand old day for the Hoops. But yeah, we're here today for the Flagship Podcast on the CeltsAreHere. I am Quinny, and I'm joined as ever by Josh. Good to see you, mate. Hail, hail.
Good to see you. Good to be back. Yeah, obviously an interesting weekend. Obviously, one of those ones you just want to get over the line, and that was the main mantra going up to Dundee. It was never going to be easy, and it wasn't. I mean, it easily could have been if Rio Hatate's shot that hit the post went in, then it would have been 3-0 up and plain sailing. But it wasn't, and it was nervy as ever. But that's part and parcel at this time of the season, and what you expect with this Celtic team, this campaign. But got over the line in the end.
Yeah, I definitely didn't feel the same kind of nerves through the match that we have in some other tighter away games this season before the deadlock's broken. And like Dundee are hard coming out of this game with lots of plaudits. The manager's thrown out statistics of like, oh, no one's had more shots against Celtic than us and all the rest of it. And honestly, like I found that, and I'm just going to say this at this point, I suppose, but like I find a bit of the praise for Dundee. Dundee did very well in the game, don't get me wrong, but I think some of it was it's a bit overstated. Like, it's not like when we played Motherwell last year when they had Van Veen or Curtis Main at St Mirren, or, you know, like Shank. You know, I don't feel that Dundee, I know they had shots and they created some, but I didn't feel threatened by them in any stage of the game. Similar to last time at Dens Park, but I really was worried that we hadn't got the game yet and something could just go against you.
Yeah, I think the only worries and nerves came when Dundee made it 2-1. When it was 0-0 and Celtic were now 2-0 up, there wasn't much nerviness to it. Like, I was there, and the anxiety in the away end for those last 10 minutes was almost unbearable. Maybe that's just from a personal point of view for me, just being very nervous at the end of the game. But nah, thankfully they got over the line. But like you say, Dundee, they don't really have specific like standout players. Maybe they've got 1 or 2 like Luke McCowan and players like that. Their left back had a good game, Owen Dodgson. But they were a really good team and they're a well-drilled team. Obviously, Tony Docherty up for Manager of the Year now, and obviously throwing up stats, but Celtic most shots on target against them or whatever it was, I didn't even know what it was. They were good, right? But I wouldn't say they were. They're not like what Hearts were to Celtic in the game where Yang gets sent off, where they were a real threat, and you think they're going to score every time they go forward. Don't get me wrong, they're a really good side, Dundee, and they deserve to be in the top 6 and fighting for Europe, just due to results and performances they've had against other teams. But they were all right. And we kind of forget, Celtic dominated that Dundee side in the end of February, beat them 7-1 at Parkhead that night. And it wasn't a similar performance, but we knew it was going to be tough, and got over the line in the end. But look, that last 10 minutes was unbearable. I know they didn't have many chances. I think the only one they had was Michael Mellon at the back post, and it wasn't even a chance. It was a half chance, really. Apart from that, it was just not much, to be fair. But at the same time, you always just have that anxiety due to the amount of late goals Celtic have conceded this season. You're getting flashbacks to balls going into the back post and things like that. Kilmarnock at home, Motherwell at home, other dropped points throughout the campaign. But thankfully, the team held out. And listen, it's wins like that massive if, I keep saying it's a big if Celtic win this league, it's wins like that get you over the line. And I'm sure we'll get on to discuss them later on. Performances like that for guys like James Forrest, just seasoned pros coming through and putting in performances, scored goals and win you games like that. Because on another day, if you started Yang in that game, could have easily went a different way. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. It was, again, same as last time we went to Dens Park. We needed to bring Mikey Johnson off the bench to kind of make the difference and save the blushes, as it were. But, there's obviously the merit of the opposition, which you're always going to worry about. You always respect your opponent. But again, like, I'm not wanting to... obviously I am, so I'm going to pull this up on screen, right? But not that I'm going to lean into this too hard or whatever, but like the refereeing goes from bad to worse for me, and I reshared this on my Twitter. If anyone follows me over there, at Quinny 3001, but a post here from Zinchenko, or whatever his name is. John Beaton has refereed 2 of Celtic's last 4 league games. Celtic fouls 30, yellow cards 5. And I think, like, in the derby, you really kind of seen that kind of thing. Against fouls 20, yellow cards 0.
Yeah,
okay.
that's incredible.
Celtic's last 4 games, 9 fouls per yellow. Against 13 fouls per yellow. And Rangers 22.5 fouls per yellows. So it's just, so it's when we're not running away with the game.
Yeah.
Anything could happen is all I want to kind of reference with that. It could even just be a second yellow, it could be a first yellow, it could be a dangerous free kick. These things just seem to go against us, and you can
just in terms of
what you can from that.
Talking about refereeing, Joe Hart getting booked for time wasting. It was the only time he time wasted it. Done it twice, I think, throughout the game. See, when goalkeepers come to Celtic Park, I think the only team that's not done it this season is Ross County, and fair play to them for not. But apart from that, every single opposition goalkeeper, see if you're in the ground, I don't know if the TV cameras pick up on it when you're watching at home on a dodgy stick or whatever, but the amount of time goalkeepers take, they put the ball in one corner to take the goal kick, in the 6-yard box, pick it up, move it again. Or they'll have a drink of water, there'll be a ball in the 6-yard line ready for them to take it, and they'll be talking to the ball boy, where's another ball? It frustrates the life out. I mean, you sit there, I go to the games with my dad, my cousin, my uncle, and we sit there and we genuinely time how long a goalkeeper will take to take a goal kick, and it's unreal at times. And for Joe Hart, listen, I know it's the end of the game, and I know Celtic are holding out, so I can partly understand why he's been booked. But in refereeing, voice crack, a belter, a voice crack there, you're always looking for consistency in terms of refereeing and decisions and booking players. There hasn't been much in terms of goalkeepers at Celtic Park getting booked for time wasting, and Joe Hart at the weekend. What he was actually doing, though, was quite funny. I'm not sure if it was on Sky, but basically, ball's going out behind the Celtic goal, and the Green Brigade were taking it, or the boys who are right down at front, boys are Green Brigade, and just holding it in and not giving it to Joe. But there was a mutual understanding between Joe and them that they weren't going to give him it back, but Joe would moan at them to give them it back, just to like make it look as if he's not doing anything wrong.
Get the pantomime on.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, it was found out, unfortunately, but yeah, just consistency, and it's annoying when that happens that Joe gets booked.
12th man.
Yeah, exactly. But it's annoying when Joe's getting booked for that, and you'll probably see Craig Gordon pulling out these antics at the weekend. Watch out for it if you're there at the game, how long he takes to take goal kicks and things like that, because I'm sure if he even does get booked, it'll be about the 5th or 6th time he's time wasting that he gets booked.
Yeah, it was definitely. I heard somebody say it was the first goal. It's the first time wasting yellow card of the season or something. Not sure how accurate that is, but certainly people are throwing that one around. But yeah, I thought Hart was probably one of the few guys that had like a decent enough afternoon. Again, equally on the converse. Like I think Luke McKibben had a very good afternoon at being disruptor and just sticking on McGregor's shoulder. McGregor didn't get by him all day. Couldn't get anything by him. Retreated at every opportunity, sadly. But like from our perspective, like you say, Forrest was the difference. If it was Yang, it could have been a different day. But I don't think anyone really turned up for us at all. It was like a firm 5 out of 10 everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I was actually saying this when I was coming home for the game. I think the only player who'd really get full pass marks was James Forrest. And dare I say it, for one of the first times this season, apart from his passing, Liam Scales, I thought had a decent game. I thought his defending was quite good on Sunday afternoon. But yeah, Forrest and Scales for me are the only real standout players. Carter had an alright game as well, but guys like McGregor, like you say, was overran in the midfield. Hatate and O'Reilly weren't able to have the influence they usually do. Kuhn, in the early first half, he was getting a bit of joy on the right-hand side, but apart from that, it kind of faded since. Ida came on, didn't have a good impact, thought he was quite poor. Iwata actually came on and he was good. I felt Iwata made a good appearance from the bench. But yeah, a lot of subpar performances, but at the end of the day, like I was saying, if you want to win leagues, you need to find a way to win games when you have subpar performances like that. And that's what Celtic done on Sunday.
We sweeper keeper action for Joe Hart. Yeah, it was like a victory of champions, as it were. Like not quite winning ugly, but winning when you're not at full pace. Certainly, is probably the way it kind of shook out for me. I didn't really have beyond you know, like obviously Forrest winning the day and being the man. Just didn't really have any heroes from the weekend, you know, in terms of like, oh, he really turned up, or his form is kind of kicking on a little bit. And Forrest is the real talk of the town at the moment. And with some of the injuries and all the rest of it, we're seeing cries that he might get a Scotland shout out. You might get back into the Scotland team. And again, it wasn't that long ago. I'm sure we were having this conversation maybe at the beginning of the season, but it wasn't that long ago he was scoring hat-tricks for Scotland in the relative, you know, like scheme of international football, maybe 2 campaigns ago or something. So again, I think a lot of people have grandfathered Forrest up until recently a wee bit more than. I think you see the ceiling. I think the last like 5 minutes of the game before he came off, you really did see that he wasn't quite getting to things as quick, and you know, tackles and passes weren't quite as slick as they were at the beginning of the match. So it's definitely not, you know, without limits. That's, you know, still at the point, but very good overall.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking about it last week. I thought if he started the game, I didn't think he was going to start actually, but if he did, I thought he would have only played like 60, 70 minutes just due to fitness, and that's what it turned out to be. But like you say, there's no disputing the guy's quality. Although he's slowed down, and obviously his main attribute when he was younger was his pace, he's developed a much more greater positional awareness, being more astute in things like his pressing. You look at that second goal that he scored, he won the ball back all by himself and managed to a wee bit of a break of the ball and fell from the front of goal and he scored. Like, that's just that cleverness and experience that he has to go and win that ball back there. And then obviously the first goal's a phenomenal strike. Kyogo did not mean that layoff, but to whack that first time into the bottom corner was, if I know it's not been nominated for goal of the season, but I think it's definitely up there in the top 5. Celtic have scored throughout this campaign. It was a wonderful shot and goal. But the Scotland thing is tough. I think if it's up to a 26-man squad, which I think it's going to be, I think there is a really,
confirmed.
Is it confirmed? Well, I think there's a really good argument for Forrest to go. You look at in Steve Clarke's team, he could fill the right wing back spot. He could probably play in one of the striker roles, and he gives you that versatility as well if you want to go to a back 4 and you play with 3 up front and he can go out wide. So I think 32 as well. He's been there before with Scotland for the Euros. Like you say, scoring hat-tricks in Nations League and things like that. He's got the experience, and to have, even if they're not going to play guys like that around, I think it's really good for Steve Clarke to include him. But listen, that's out with Celtic. I don't know if he will get called up. He said he hasn't booked any holidays though, so potentially that's in the back of his mind.
Going to Germany. No, I can dig that. I think like ultimately, like for Scotland, he's a fantastic 10-minute player. You know, like bring him on for 10, 15. I don't think anyone would, you know, right back, I know, is a bit of a hole for Scotland as well as striker there now with injuries and such. But like, you know, maybe there's a starting berth at right wing back, kind of right mid or whatever, fine. But I think like if you're Clarke, you look at Forrest and you think 5-10 minutes at the end of a game for Che Adam, whatever, you know, like that's there's not many other guys you would probably be able to dovetail like that. So I can dig it. I can get behind it for sure.
Definitely. If it's 0-0 in Munich going into the last 10 minutes, bring James Forrest on against Germany, scores the winner, happy days.
Exactly. It's just as easy as that, isn't it? And apparently, I guess in a roundabout way, talking about Scotland and stuff like that, and it's just as easy as that. It seems to be the head of, you know, like the Celtic youth production line, as it were, you know. So, you know, me and you over that, like you way more so than myself, Josh, of course, but we've seen Darren O'Day and Stephen McManus in charge of the B team for the last like 2 or 3 seasons since Ange was in situ anyway. And, you know, we'll talk about this for a couple of minutes. There's some things I kind of want to say, and I'd love to hear your take on a lot of this as well, Josh, because I know you're much closer to that side of the game than me and most other people, even in the kind of content space, certainly. But when it was O'Day and McManus first coming in with Ange, it was very clear very quickly that they were like, you know, like the understudies to the first team in terms of like how they were going to play. They're setting up the same tactics. So then if the manager did want an inverted left back, the guy would at least not be out of his depth in terms of known positioning and stuff like that. And same goes for all the other positions, which is fine, right? Over which time we have seen us lose half a dozen, I'm going to say, just to spitball it, maybe it's 4, right? But let's just say half a dozen under 18 players out of contract for free to Liverpool, Bayern Munich, 1 or 2 other places as well. And we've not had, you know, I think there's definitely some good things happening in the youth academy setup. I think there's been a bit of consistency there maybe now for about 5 or 6 years, and you then start to see the kind of fruit of that labour. But when it comes to the B team, if it is going to run tactically to mirror the manager, which it now seems to be doing again with Brendan from the B team that I seen earlier this year, certainly. Anyway, is that you're then tying yourself to the manager. You're then tying yourself to the manager's style of play. And it was Ange, it's now Brendan, similar but different. And if you've got youth players who are trying to develop and, like get their game sorted, get their rhythm, then number one, that's just not optimal. And the biggest teams in European and world football, like, the academy is famous for the way they play. Maybe the manager does play it a bit differently because every manager does play a little bit differently, but the academy is very firmly got its own vibe, got its own kind of thing going. The reason we're talking about this, of course, as some of you will know, is it is highly rumoured and speculated that O'Day's been moved on now. And I think CX players, all about them adding value to the club and keeping the history in the club and really getting that culture ingrained into the place. All about that. And I think O'Day moving into that role of overseeing people who are on loan and all the youth players and keeping tabs on them and, whatever. I love that. But as soon as I see that happening, I think, right, okay, well, we have to be getting in an actual coach that can develop youth players into first team players. Yeah. And there is, I've put comments out in a few different places. And I've had some feedback to some of this, right? But there is lots of ambitious coaches out there. And there's lots of coaches out there that are elite youth coaches. That's their thing. They don't want to be a first team manager one day that maybe we thought O'Day or McManus might have thought. But I can guarantee you Mulgrew fancies himself to go on and be a first-team manager one day if he does take this job. And Johnny Hayes, who knows? I've heard he's a good coach up at Aberdeen, and that's all good as well. But we need someone in that position now where the 17-year-old that's getting approached by Liverpool, the 16-year-old that gets approached by Bayern Munich or whatever it is, can actually go, well, I might be able to go to this laboratory of a football organization, and this football science out the hoo-ha and maybe get a loan deal here or there or whatever. Or I can stay here, also be renovating the facilities. But you need to be able to see that the guy at the top of, the youth tree, the pyramid or whatever, has the ability and has the, that there is a route there to get you into the first team or to get you out into a meaningful loan, like we've seen with one or two guys this season. And ultimately for me, I'm not really, they might do great. I'm sure they're going to be great coaches and good guys in Celtic. Mulgrew certainly is a minor legend, I would say, in the modern times. Just with, some of the appearances and some of the goals and all the rest of it. But I don't think they're the people we want leading the B team at this stage. I think we want people that was one of the things I said to you in a few of the games is I'm not sure O'Day is making these players much better. I think he's coaching them very well to play the first team tactics, and they're showing up and they're doing the best with the players they have and the tactics they have to get a team together,
Yeah.
And I don't think that's changing, and I think that's the problem that needs to change, is my kind of long-winded kind of dust on this.
I think it's been the case with a lot of Celtic youth teams over the years where it's been guys who are ex-players who are taking their first steps in coaching who tend to get the job, whether that be Darren O'Dea, guys before his predecessors and things like that, and even the 18s was Stuart McLaren, I think it was. But now that role's vacant, and it's, Charlie Mulgrew and Johnny Hayes. I don't know what you think of their suitability for the role, Quinny. I look at Hayes, like you said, they're decent reputation up at Aberdeen, coaching their 16s for the past year. Both Mulgrew and Hayes got their A licence. Now, I don't know how easy that is to come about. But Mulgrew has been going round about the country. He was visiting De Zerbi at Brighton. He's visited Southampton, Russell Martin. But talking about these guys, and there's one name that's actually come up that was in a report last week. Obviously, they've got the under-18s vacancy, and now you've got the B team vacancy as well, because O'Day's moved up to this player pathway management role, which is a totally different conversation itself. They're going to take two out of a four-name list, and that list is Mulgrew, Hayes, an unnamed internal candidate, and Adam Asghar, who is currently the manager of Southampton under-21s. He was assistant to Tam Courts at Dundee United. Then he went to Sunderland under-18s, and he's got Southampton 21s sitting top of the Premier League 2 Division 2. So that's like the second tier of Youth Premier League. They're sitting top of that. He's only 28, 29, the guy. So I think that would be a very interesting one if they were to get him in, because he seems, like you were saying, a kind of focused on youth-driven guy, just given previous roles and stuff like that. And he's not even an ex-pro, he's an external candidate, and I feel that'd be a positive step for the club to bring in someone like that, and it's certainly encourage fans, because there's a lot of people who, when they see the OD stuff, moving up to that player pathway management role, lots of shouts of nepotism, jobs for the boys, etc. And that is the same what's come out when Mulgrew and Hayes have been linked with the job. Now, listen, these guys, their experience is invaluable in helping these young players develop, and might be very good tacticians, I'm not entirely sure. And listen, if they perform well in the interview, then the job is probably theirs, just given recent ties with the club and things like that. But I don't know, are they the best men for the roles? Hayes and Mulgrew? I'm not entirely sure. I would much rather see a guy like Ascar, who has the experience in youth and who's doing pretty well with a young Southampton team, doing pretty well. Well, see him get the role, but it's not up to me at the end of the day. The OD thing is interesting because it's not really a role the club have had before. The player pathway management side of things, the description was in the website that he's going to be bridging the gap or whatever it is between first team and youth teams, and monitoring players out on loan as well, and sort of liaising with them and how they're doing. Because the only real, let's be honest, the success Celtic have out on loan this season is Bosun Lawal. Other than that, not many. Quan's just pulled up by a hamstring injury. He's out for the season now. So quite a lot of poor loans, I would say, bit disappointing. Maybe guys who have been thrown into levels that are a bit too high for them already, and just not getting games because of that. I think Matthew Anderson and Toby Oluwayemi and Lawal are the only three that have really done well out on loan this season. Johnny Kenny to a certain extent in Ireland, but that's a different conversation. Going back to the youth and stuff at the club, I don't know. You don't really know how to feel about it, because we don't know how good Charlie Mulgrew and Johnny Hayes are. Like, genuinely, we don't know. They could come in and be like Xabi Alonso when he was in Real Sociedad Youth Academy. They took a kind of chance on him. Like, we don't know.
But that was one season, right? And then he's the Bayer Leverkusen first team manager. So what the fuck did Real Sociedad get out of that? One season of having a good B team manager.
Exactly.
Oh, great! That's going to fix our problems, isn't it? That's that's kind of why I don't totally grasp with it. Johnny Hayes getting Johnny Hayes number one. Like, I think he's definitely somebody to be hired if he's got coaching experience and everything else, and he's doing the kind of job that people say he's doing. When you mention an internal candidate there, I would love to see an internal candidate move up into this picture, from these decisions, because again, is Scotland. It's something we produce as coaches, like I've got my B license. I've been at these things. A licenses, I've also never done it, but I can imagine very easily they're not given out. These things. Yeah. Pros do get a kind of easier access to getting on. Don't know about pass rates. It's maybe a conversation for a different day. But they definitely aren't just given out willy nilly in that regard. But Scotland, there's tons of coaches here. Tons. Some of them are in great jobs. Some of them aren't. Obviously, you're not going to give a great job to a guy that's not been in one, if you know what I mean. But there is like a really untapped resource there of like guys that go get their B's, get their A's, coach it. Again, not to go into Scottish football too much, but I know like Hearts, Hibs, Dundee United, Aberdeen have got decent infrastructures in their own places. They have good community angles, and lots of coaches are like trackied up with them, as it were, and like take sessions and all the rest of it, which is cool. So if we have a guy, like I know two people that coach at Celtic and youth level. And I know like quite a few of those positions are long-standing, people that have been there. So whoever is in the frame for it, I'd love to see them move up the ranking, as it were, because it will be down to some sort of merit. They've been giving players up the food chain, or you'll know who you're getting, and advancing that person to enhance the club. I think would, not knowing who it is, be a good move. But I say I'd love to see Mulgrew get a job at Celtic. Just if he's top of the B team, along with Hayes, I just think it's too much. We're doing the same thing again, but it's just copy the first team, and then how good are the youth players we've got? Let's just work that out. Whereas it should be like, let's focus on getting these players up to being, the kind of standard we want them to be in.
There needs to be a level of similarity so that it's easier for the players to transition, but at the same time, I know what you mean. The internal candidate would be interesting to see who it was, because listen, it could be anyone. It could be a guy who's coaching like 16s, 14s, whatever it is. It could be Stephen McManus, because we don't know what's happening with him at the minute, given OD's moved up to this role. We don't know what's happening with McManus.
Fair.
But it'll be interesting to see. It's just certainly one to keep your eye out from, because just in terms of the B team and youth in general, there's not much coherence given from the club. The B team beat Partick Thistle in a Glasgow Cup semi-final last week, and we still don't know when the final is. There's no date, nothing. We don't know who Celtic are playing in it because Queen's Park v Rangers B was the other semi-final. I can't find any result for that anywhere, whether it be Rangers website, Queen's Park website, nothing. So one to keep your eyes peeled for, certainly with the youth, because there's not a lot of coherence from the club and things like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's maybe one of those ones where, like you were saying with the transfer business as well, we're not too
Yeah.
sure who's steering the ship.
Exactly.
We just want a better idea of this is the, like, we're building this new training facility, right? And I really hope that it gets some sort of nice nickname that references the Lisbon Lions, like the Lions Den or something cool like that. And I wanted to
name it after James Forrest.
Or Tierney, maybe, whoever paid for it.
Yeah.
You know, whoever's transfer fee paid for it. For sure. You know, number one, we want to be producing more players of our own, you know, so we have the next Forrest, the next McGregor. I would even say Ralston and Welsh in this conversation as well. Those foundational players that keep the club identity and always can come in the moment of need.
Yeah.
But number two is for some lubrication in the transfer market, because not just with FFP, but just with actual reality of turnover. If you can just, like Man City do to the absolute nth degree, if you can just have like residual players that you don't use or bank on, make a wee transfer to Dundee, sell one to Shrewsbury, sell one to West Brom, you know, whatever, then that's like, you know, that's a revenue generator that then means, oh, do you know what? We can now go up a price. We can now go up transfer bracket for the prime target now, because we just sold 5 guys that have never played for us.
Yeah, definitely. And you want
developed.
The end goal with developing this whole youth facility and restructure and things like that is to make Celtic, because we've not really had a good reputation for youth, at least over the past year. You look at guys who've come out, the only one, at least in the last 5 years, who's really prospered is Kieran Tierney. Ralston, Welsh, they're squad players, they're not real impactful players who are really starting every week. You want Celtic to get to this stage where, at least in Scotland and potentially in Britain, where they're recognised for having these players that continually come out of your academy that can seamlessly come into the first team. Like Man City do it so well. You look, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, Rico Lewis, these guys have just come straight out of the youth team and straight into playing, not regularly for the first team, but they're getting minutes here and there, and they will go on to have massive futures. Phil Foden's one of the most exciting young players in the world right now. And you want Celtic to eventually get to that level now. I know it takes time, and obviously, 5, 6 years, 8 years, whatever it is, but you want to get to that level where you're bringing guys in from the academy and they can come into the first team, and it means you don't have to buy a squad player left back. You have this guy who is coming in and he's going to be your backup left back for the season because you know he's good enough. There's no taking chances, you know, because Celtic have the standard of producing these players that he's going to be good enough to be that role for the season. Like, yeah. I hate using like Man City, but that's what they've really done with Rico Lewis.
You can even say the boy Quansah for Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know, when he had to come in, you know, exactly. All the injuries and stuff.
Connor Bradley's another, well, he's kind of emerged out the blue, but there's so many.
Same thing, but you just think, well, it's a right back from the academy. Exactly. You give something. And look, for anyone who's listening to this thinking, oh yeah, Premier League teams and all the rest of it, but the teams we are kind of lining ourselves up against is Dinamo Zagreb, is Benfica, is PSV, Feyenoord, Ajax. So like clubs that have the same means and whatever as us, but same as us. But these clubs for the last 20, 30 years, probably their entire history really, have just been laser focused on drilling. Like, you know, we're talking about Forrest and Johnson. Like, wingers are definitely our thing. You know, like definitely wingers are a Celtic kind of hallmark. Mm-hmm. You know, we should be bleeding tricky wingers like every year. One or two comes through. And maybe they don't make it with us, but maybe they play for Livingston or Shrewsbury or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But again, Mikey Johnson goes to West Brom. Exactly. But with the facilities thing, it's probably the last thing I want to say on just why I don't. Again, I want to make it clear that I would love to see Mulgrew get a good gig at Celtic and kick on his career, and you know, big Mulgrew fan. And Hayes, I think he's cutting his teeth. But when you look at the facilities that are getting built, see with youth players, see with football period, all of it is like standards and expectations, right? Now, the environment that, like, let's say the Premier League teams do operate in at youth level in terms of the staff they have, the amount of staff, the detail that goes into, and subsequently, because of that, the facilities and the technology they have at their disposal. Mm-hmm. Like, that is, like, it's so close to being a different sport. So, you know, in some regards, it's it's not true when you actually look at the differences between it, like actual, day-to-day living, what's expected and how does it go. And if we're going to spend all this money on a youth facility, and then like the top coach there is Mulgrew and Hayes, like how can you actually make the best use out of everything you could now have at your disposal? You want people that are used to operating like with the best of stuff, and then they can say, right, okay, well, now that you've built this, it's great, but we need to tweak that. You didn't add that in, and see, actually, now this new thing just came out. You better install that before da 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 da. And then like you've got that kind of. I always think with these youth academies from Benfica and Zagreb and that as being like a high school or a college or something, because there is like some of them do dorms and stuff like that, of course, because their countries are quite rural and they need to bring players in. But it is like that, head teacher kind of vibe of like they oversee the youth academy, and the youth academy is the youth academy. Nothing else in the club interferes with that to an extent.
Yeah, definitely. Red Bull's another good example of that kind of college feel. I read the book about Red Bull, and some of the stuff they have is unbelievable. Barcelona's like a college as well. Listen, obviously Barcelona's one of the best teams in the world, but you eventually want Celtic to get to that standard.
That's what the facility should be in an effort to do, isn't it?
That's why you're investing 25, 30 million, whatever it is, to get to this level. Will it happen soon? Probably not, but if you get the right personnel, like you say, and you get things right, you're not messing about and putting in the wrong people in the wrong places, good things can happen. Because let's be honest, there's so much talent in Scotland, whether it be if Celtic are scouting in Ireland, it's just about getting these guys in, getting them the right coaching. That's why coaching is such an important part of it, because you can have all the talent in the world as a player. But if you're getting coached by a guy who has no experience and is not very good, then you're not going to get the best out of your talents. And at the end of the day, Celtic want these guys to be challenging for the first team eventually. So that's why you need the right people and the right coaches in place. And that's why it's such crucial getting these appointments right, like whether it be the A-teams manager, the B-team manager, because they have such a big role in developing these young players and shaping their careers. So it'll be very interesting to see where it progresses.
Yeah, because of this, we are forever in the transfer market at the moment, eternally, for a few different positions. The number one that has been probably on, maybe with the exception of the Januaries, but certainly the last 2 summers, has been the goalkeeper. And we've been linked to a new name here. We've got Patrick Pence of Brøndby, who is on loan from Bayer Leverkusen. And Brøndby are top of the Danish Superliga last time I checked, certainly, and are on track for Champions League qualification. So a goalkeeper, kind of, he's I know this guy from before when he was in Austria, a decent goalkeeper, no two ways about it. The first thing I said to you about when I read this is I'm not sure this guy's Champions League level.
Yeah, he's Brøndby 4 points clear now of Copenhagen at the top of the league. So decent standard of keeper, like you say, Champions League level. Is he a Dominik Livakovic? No. But is he an interesting name to be linked with? Yes. And obviously, Brøndby are doing very well this season. Bayer Leverkusen don't sign you for nothing, because he was doing very well in Austria, but he's not getting games for Bayer Leverkusen because Radetzky's a really good goalkeeper. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. He's 27, so he's a long-term option if you did sign him. And when he goes back to Leverkusen in the summer, he'll have a year left on his deal. So it's one of their ones where you can get him for a decent price, maybe 3-4 million, 5 million, I don't know, in that ballpark. But yeah, it'll be interesting. There's a lot of names being thrown about every single week, it seems, in terms of this goalkeeping position. And it does show that the club are already looking, and that's what they should be doing. And it's an important position. You look how key a goalkeeper can be. Looking at Joe Hart this season, he's arguably been one of Celtic's best players of the year. Even across the city, Jack Butland's been so influential there. So it's a crucial position. Celtic have to get it right. Pence, I don't know much about him, Quinny. You probably know him better than me. But it's going by his club, his age profile, things like that. It looks like it could be all right.
Yeah, definitely like a good keeper. I don't think I don't think he'll let you down. He's quite a brawn guy, if you get me. Like quite powerful in that. I had to double check the Austrian team. It was Austria Vienna. I thought it'd be really funny if it was Rapid, just because how often we seem to buy Rapid players. But so yeah, it's a funny one. Leverkusen's very overburdened with goalkeepers at the moment, so maybe Brøndby can get a deal to extend him and take him into Champions League with them, or maybe he's out there and we approach him. He's got some Austria caps as well. So again, when you're saying earlier, like, don't know who's leading the ship, every goalkeeper I think we've been linked to has international caps, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know if that's the identifier that we're using. Have they played for their team in the last 3 years?
I'm wondering then if my dad's keeping something under wraps, because he always says to me, if a player has international caps, I would sign him, because he says that's a good standard to sign a player. So I don't know if my dad's leading the recruitment for a goalkeeper at the minute, but I hope not.
Well, it's a nice kind of little shortcut to, because you'd expect at least that country know him pretty well and have, scouted him rigorously his whole life, probably. So,
especially if it's a good country, like you don't want to be buying a guy who's the goalkeeper of
a bad country.
So at least it's like Austria he's get caps for, which is good.
Yeah, not too bad. So, one I'm not too excited about, but I don't think. I'm just trying to think of a comp, a comparison somebody would maybe think of, but short sleeve goalkeeper. That's a good way to maybe describe him. He wears short sleeves. He's one of those guys. So Patrick Pence is another name to add onto the list, along with the few and the many that have been jumping onto it. Southampton and PSV also said to be keen. I don't think, maybe PSV might have a look at him because their goalkeeper situation's a bit different, but I think Southampton, Bazunu's just got injured, hasn't he? But they're looking to get promoted, so they'll probably sign CeltsAreHere, won't they?
That'll be it.
CeltsAreHere and Bazuno, and then that'll be that moved on. Another player that has been getting a lot of transfer links, and we've spoken about this on the pod a few times in January, certainly, was Matt O'Reilly. I'm actually seeing now, by the way, Atletico Madrid are pressing on with like their summer targets now,
right.
So we've not heard any more about it. So it makes me feel a little bit better, as well, which is good. But he has been nominated for, surprise, surprise, PFA Player of the Year. And Rodgers is not up for Manager of the Year. I don't think, it's kind of funny how the Celtic, normally like the Rangers manager, just probably is by default going to be in the mixture because of the win volume. But it's kind of interesting that Brendan isn't even in the mix. I know he's not had a great first season back. It's been a bit rocky, but to not even be in the picture, it's a bit of a slap, isn't it?
I think you can argue it's a bit of a slap, because I think Brendan's done a really good job with what he's been handed this season in terms of the players he's been given. But I think it's a lot down to the strength of the other candidates. Like John McGlynn's on course for an invincible season at Falkirk, and Derek McInnes has done a really good job at Kelly, and Tony Dockett is challenging for Europe with Dundee. So you can't fault these other candidates, and frankly, they're probably in a better position to be nominated for it than Brendan. Listen, if we won the League Cup and had the League Cup in the bag and didn't get beat off Kilmarnock early in the season, and he's on for a treble, then potentially he's up for it, but he's not. And I don't have many complaints about it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think the picture of Matt O'Reilly holding the sign with Tav and Shankland and all that, went viral a few times over for a few different reasons. I seen one where people doubled up Shankland's head. That was just so get a lot of attention, certainly over the last couple of days. And this was kind of leaked out from, I think it was like a director's Q&A session or something like that. Well, Daizen Maeda is back on the grass, and expecting to see him in training this week, hopefully, with a view to starting against Hearts at the weekend.
Potentially, it'd be interesting. I don't know if he'll start the game. Listen, he might, because you want him to play the Glasgow Derby. That's the goal in the end, isn't it? Because we know how crucial he is in those games. So having him back would be massive this weekend. Obviously, Forrest came in, scored 2 goals at the weekend. You can have dilemmas over who you'd play in the wings then if Maeda's back available, but seems to have made a miraculous recovery, because, this time last week, we were feeling the season was over.
Yeah, big time. And it's it's definitely not something that we've came to expect over this season, is rapid recoveries. If anything, it's been failed recoveries. Which again, I guess I kind of maybe missed this out a little bit earlier, but with McGregor, people are saying he's still not fit. I don't know about you, right? I'll just kind of mention this in the same kind of breath as Maeda, I suppose, right? But after the game, he's with James Forrest for the man of the match thing, and the interviewer says something to him kind of, when will you be fully fit? And see if you look at his face, I think he's shocked. I think he's saying to himself, you think I'm not fit? After watching the game today, you think I'm unfit or I'm not fully healed? So TBC kind of on that, I suppose. But Maeda, if he's back in, he's a huge lift to this team. And I think the key question is, I think Maeda goes straight back onto the left-hand side. But then, is it Forrest or Kuhn?
I would go with Forrest. I think you can't play a winger who's just scored 2 goals to win you the game and drop him the next game. I think it'd be very harsh, and we know Forrest is really effective on the right-hand side as well, so Kuhn wasn't great the weekend either. But at the same time, we always say this in the game before a derby, you want to have consistency in the lineup, and you want it ideally to be the same team. So if you start Forrest on Saturday against Hearts, does it probably mean he starts the derby? Probably, but do you really want him starting the derby? I'm not sure. There's a lot of dilemmas to be had in terms of team selection for the weekend.
Yeah, big time. I think the forward areas are always the ones this season because it has just been head scratching between left wing for the most part of the year, a little bit of right wing when we still had Abada around and was wondering about his fitness and everything else in between. But I think since we've not had Maeda, like the Dundee game's a good example, and maybe Aberdeen a little bit as well, I suppose. But like the traction he gives you and the fear that he puts into the other team is valuable, and I think you can only kind of thrive off all of that a little bit better. So yeah, I'd love to see him come straight back in. But I guess that kind of maybe ties me back into the wee side point I made a second ago. I would not be surprised if McGregor didn't start against Hearts.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I don't think he looked fit at the weekend. Well, he looked fit, but not 100% fit. And I thought Iwata made a good impact, showed things up in the midfield, and he's just much more of a defensive asset. Iwata cleared things up. I think the impact of Luke McGowan dwindled when Iwata was on as well. Just much more, thought he was more effective on the ball. And personally, yes, I would drop McGregor for Iwata this weekend and resultantly play Iwata in the derby because I still don't think McGregor's up to speed. Listen, he'll have another full week of training under his belt before the Hearts game, so he could well be back fit for it, but I don't know.
I think like as much as it's the fitness thing that's coming into it as well, like the like we said on the show for the last couple of weeks, like the balance that Iwata just puts into midfield for me is like totally night and day. For anyone that caught my breakdown of the game afterwards, it's not just the midfield, but like straight away, as soon as McGregor comes off for Iwata, you see Taylor much further up the pitch. He's not like in that kind of double pivot kind of situation, inverted fullback role. You see Carter Vickers after that break the lines and run up the pitch, you know, because he knows Iwata's there and he'll cover him, and it's, I don't know, he's just, it's like Carter Vickers been in the team. The rest of the team just gets that bit of confidence that like, hey, we're going to be okay defensively. And it feels like Iwata, it kind of gives that to more of the team a bit higher up the pitch.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I'd play him at the weekend and I'd play him in the derby. Because plus he's much better a defensive option than what McGregor is. And there's no disputing that. We know McGregor started out his career as a winger and he's continually moved back and back, whereas Iwata was a centre half when he was at Yokohama Marinos. So he's a much more naturally defensive player and he's just tidy with the ball. There were a number of times that weekend I felt McGregor put passes astray, whereas Iwata is very tidy. He retains the ball well. So yeah, I'd play him at the weekend over McGregor.
Yeah. And I think like if we can get, like I'm always in the same frame of mind as yourself, that pre-derby you want to kind of set the derby team in and then get a kind of dry run, get the result in the bag, sub some guys off at 60, 70 and, get ready to go again sort of thing. The defence and the goalkeeper, of course, seems really nailed on. I don't think there'll be any surprises unless there's any training surprises, of course, between now and then. So again, we're still in this kind of rhythm, this part of this, where we do have like a really good level of consistency. Hatate was in a bit of a downward ebb at the weekend against Dundee, but 2 games at home, back to back is going to be, the kind of environment we normally see a good bit of form come out of the likes of Hatate and O'Reilly certainly as well. Like these guys are great home and away for us overall, but at home in the do or die matches, like is when I think these guys really come to life a little bit more. I want to check out our head-to-head with Hearts so far this year because we normally finish the show with a score prediction, and I'm quite confident that we're going to. Well, I'm confident we're going to go and get the result. I'm not too sure how troublesome we've found Hearts this year off the top of my head.
Very much so. Beaten the last 2 times we've played them, and
that's why I've expunged it from my memory. That's why
we did beat them 4-1 at Tynecastle at the start of the season. Then we were beaten 2-0 back to back. If I'm correct, yeah. So 4-1 beginning the season with O'Reilly, Hatate, and McGregor in midfield. Palma started that with Dyson and Kyogo, and then the losses. I normally put this on the screen. Sorry that I've not, guys. I'm on a different system. When we lost 2-0, we started Turnbull and Palma and Mikey Johnson in that team.
at home for the 2-0 loss. And the last time we played them at Tynecastle and lost 2-0, they got that penalty, obviously. Yang gets sent off.
Yeah, that was that. I think that game can be wiped from the memory. That was just a poor afternoon. And the 2-0 defeat at home earlier in the season was, I see a lot of things going out define in the trenches. Celtic were in the trenches at that time of the season, just going by the lineup, like Turnbull, Mickey Johnson, who are both now not even at the club. So you can you can't forgive it, but you can understand why perhaps now we lost the game. You can definitely understand why we lost the game a couple of months ago at Tynecastle because, well, frankly, very poor officiating. This weekend should be interesting because Celtic practically at full strength if Maeda's back, and Hearts don't really have much to play for. They practically get third in the bag. So I don't know. I think it's still definitely a tough game because the next two home games, we know what can happen if Celtic win them both, but it's the two toughest home games you could ask for, the team that's third and the team that's second. So I don't know. I don't think it will be straightforward is what people are imagining. Perhaps a lot of people going into that Aberdeen semi-final thinking this can be should be 2-3-0 here, easily make it through the final. I think it will be similar to that Aberdeen game. It will be tough, it will be difficult, but if Celtic can get an early goal, like is the case at home, then you can certainly be a bit more confident.
Yeah, I think the first goal is going to be crucial to the ebb and flow of the game. Certainly. And with guys like Shankland, like Hearts have got a good squad. Like they've got a really good squad, you know. They're properly adopting the whole Bayern Munich tactic of just buy the best guys in the league and try and mash them all together. Some of the business that they're doing in the summer. So fair play to them in that. And I say all of them are coming here to make a name. And it's the same. Every team that comes to Celtic Park kind of play the same way. It's maybe a little bit different depending on on display and the team involved. But I think defensively, like we're in a really good spot. Hart's probably in the best little kind of vein of form he's had this season, certainly. And you can feel that he's building up. And it feels like with that back four, all being fit and available and getting consistent minutes under their belt, I'm quite hopeful that, you know, Hearts don't score 2 in this one, is my first thought.
Yeah, hopefully not.
One or none.
I think it was, I remember the Hearts game at Parkhead. Now, I might be wrong. I think they only had 2 shots on target the whole game, if I'm correct. And one of their goals is a free kick as well. So that was a freak game, that one. Very rarely are Celtic beaten at home like that. But at the same time, 2 shots on goal. Going on from that, obviously beaten by Hearts the last 2 times we played them, the players will be out to prove a point 100% against this Hearts side. They won't want to be beaten for a 3rd time in a row off them. So that'll be an extra little motivation for the guys as well.
Yeah. And then potentially, you know, the Iwata McGregor debate to one side, but potentially like as good a front three as we've had all season, if it is Maeda, Kyogo, Forrest, it's probably... Is that if we had a better front three than that this year? I don't know.
Well, when Palma was on form, he was doing pretty well. And arguably if Abada was on form at the time before he left, then you could argue that. But Forrest seems to be the man at the minute. He does like a goal against Hearts as well, James Forrest. So hopefully he can come up with the goods. Kyogo does like a goal against Hearts also. And I have no doubts he will play this game. 100% he'll be starting and Ida off the bench.
Tate loves playing Hearts as well.
Yeah, Tate does. So should be interesting. Very much looking forward to it because I think this will be the Parkhead will be rocking for this game on Saturday because the fans know how close the team are, but they need a massive push to get over the line over these next 2 games. And I assume Celtic Park will be full on Saturday, similarly to what it will be the following Saturday in the derby, and it could be a really good afternoon.
Yeah. And it'll be full with an extra 4 subscribers from the CeltsAreHere channels. We're giving away 4 tickets this weekend. Be sure to check out the Dundee review on the channel that was posted probably the day before you listen to this. And the Dundee preview. Random comments will be drawn on Thursday for the live show that we do previewing the Hearts game this weekend. I'm going to go with the score prediction. I'm going to say Celtic are going to win this 3-1, Josh. What are you giving it?
I'm giving it 2-0 Celtic.
2-0 to the Hoops. Brilliant. Yeah. Oh, if any of you are going, maybe you're coming with me, you're going to win a ticket. Make sure to have some fun, travel safe. And hail, hail, Moan the Hoops.